Hello and welcome to the channel. My name is Annalisa and today I'm doing a reading vlog because I am dog sitting and therefore doing something mildly interesting for the next 2 weeks, which is very long for compared to how long I normally dog sit. I normally just do a weekend at a time. But I'm also I'm in kind of a funky reading mood right now. I'm still in a funk, not too happy feeling, so I'm not really up to my bigger, more complicated fantasy works and sci-fi that I like to read, or like hard-hitting contemporaries. So I'm reading a big selection of nonfiction, which I'll show you some of the books, and trading those off with J.D. Robb books, because I've decided that I feel sorry enough for myself to do a full reread of the 52 book series, because it's super comforting. I know how they all go, so like I'm not going to be surprised unpleasantly, and even when I don't know how they're going to go, when I read the new one that comes out, Nora Roberts, who is also J.D. Robb, is a romance writer, and so she knows how to do happily ever afters, and she knows how to make really good, pleasing characters, and how to have hard-hitting topics, like dealing with murder and all the things around that, while still not hurting my heart when I read it. So I really like the balance that she hits there. And so I'm not reading new content, so I tend to restrict myself to how many times I reread this series, because it is very enthralling, and so I don't get much other reading done, and I want to always be reading new books to review new books and have more of a wider range of things to talk about. But I'm feeling bad for myself, so that's what I'm gonna do. But I am also reading, I said in my Mooney Booktuber tag, I think, that I can read nonfiction if it's something other than a memoir. At the same time, when I'm feeling depressed, because it doesn't turn on my over-identifying with a character who's getting hurt thing, and it doesn't have like the fantasy world building and stuff. And so for some reason, nonfiction, even if it's about stuff like racism and sexism and stuff like that, is actually okay for me to read while depressed. So I'll show you what I'm reading. So here I've got So You Want to Talk About Race, which I haven't started yet, and Twisted, which I haven't started yet. This one is about Tangled History of Black Hair Culture, and this one's fairly obvious. But I'm also little by little reading The Pretty One and Braiding Sweetgrass. And then if I ever feel up to it, I have started Dark and Deepest Red, but it's a bit sad. So I'm reading it very slowly. I'm like on page 70 or so. And so these all have tissues in them, because that's what I use for markers, because I have tissue boxes in every room of my house. And while I'm here, I'm just going to show you some of the necessities that I take when dog sitting, especially for a long period like this. We've got a new hat that I just found at Target, which is very pretty. I think it's 4th of July themed, or Memorial Day themed, right, patriotic themed, because it's Memorial Day tomorrow. Hairbrush, very important. My pills, vanilla, Coke Zero, the cereal, which is what I always start my day with, some sunscreen in case I go out. This new thing, which I just found, which is one of these. I love these because I get things that are practically hot flashes. I take several medications, and one of them makes my heart beat faster than normal, and when that happens I heat up and it acts a lot like a hot flash, and I need to cool myself down, and that fan has worked really well. I have my laptop, very important. Ice water from home, because I don't like water from anywhere else. We have a well, and it's a very distinct combination of like minerals. There's my current J.D. Robb book, my bag that I carry things in, which is a Jane Austen Pride and Prejudice with Cats bag. I will link where I got that below. The purse, the switch, candy, snacks, and of course very important when dog sitting, a dog. Hello. I'm sure you'll see her lots throughout this vlog, but this is Dakota, and she's adorable. She's a very sweet girl, and she's a big slurpy girl. I don't know what kind she is. Some of you dog people might know. The other Christine who reads suggested what kind of dog she might be when she appeared briefly in a video, space opera review video, by which I don't mean I was reviewing space operas. I was reviewing a book titled Space Opera. But anyway, this is a very cool house. It's a very Dead Things themed house. Like, for example, that's a stuffed bird. I think it's a pheasant. And there are like horns all over the place. I don't think these ones are real, but most of the ones in the house are real. But the coolest part is the backyard. Here she goes. Here she goes. Aren't you a pretty girl? Go. The birds did not appreciate Dakota. They dive bomb her, and she doesn't give a single care. But this is the beautiful waterfall area, complete with little goldfish. There's one. And I love this rock landscaping with little plants growing out in between. This is so totally my style of garden. This kind of messy but intentionally messy, where it's all looks very organic but in a planned fairy garden kind of a way. I just absolutely love it, and clearly they put a lot of work into this because the weeds are practically non-existent. Yeah, you can tell the birds don't appreciate either me or the dog being up here, but this garden was in fact made for people, not just birds. So they're gonna have to live with it. Like, they've got things like this woven thing everywhere. There's some dead animal bones. This is a very interesting tree with all that stuff. There is a road over there, so it's a little noisy. But over here we have bachelor's buttons, and the owner, the person I'm dog sitting for, said I could pick the flowers. So I think I'm going to press some of those because I wasn't able to go wildflower hunting this year in Spokane, where these grow wild, which is unfortunate because they are a really great color in resin, and I need more blue, so I think I'm going to press some of those because there's clearly plenty of them. And also, obviously, the gardener loves snapdragons, which I also love. Yeah, are they bothering you? Are they bothered by you, Dakota? You don't care. She don't care. And also lots of beautiful roses and cute little things like this with seashells that they've gathered. Hello, beautiful. Oh, this one smells really good. Oh, and I love pink mixed with orange. I love pink mixed with everything, but like, this is really nice. And this is a really nice run for Dakota. She likes to make a big circle up here. And it feels kind of like you're in a fairy garden forest place. And it's really nice. But it also has this great big green area. So, pretty great. And there's shade in the afternoons just from the house. So I can sit out here, watch Dakota play in the yard, because she needs to be watched because she likes to dig into the neighbor's yard, and read my book. And it's really nice. And even go on my computer. I sat out here to edit my quizzes video, which should be out long before this comes out. I just sat out here and it was really nice, and their seats are quite comfortable over there. I've also been trying out all the chairs like Goldilocks to find one that doesn't hurt my back. This couch does hurt my back. This chair seems not to, so that's good. So I will be updating you on the many different books that I read gradually over these 2 weeks, and we'll see what happens. So I've been reading Twisted, and quite liking it. It's very interesting. I struggled a bit it was very interesting in the beginning. Then I started struggling a bit because the organizational structure was a bit, there was a tendency to go off on tangents, and there are like organizational what are they called? Headers that like introduce different topics, but it felt like those topics would be addressed for a little bit and then it would be a tangent, and then it would circle back to something that had already been discussed but would add to that, and it just felt a little confusing. But then it got to a part where it was talking in a lot of generalities, and it was talking a lot about how things are now in the Eurocentric views, but now it's gotten into talking about how things were in Africa, specifically Yoruba, which coincidentally is a language that I saw come up on my quizzes video that will have come out a couple weeks ago, and the word, I think Ife, I-F-E, meaning love, was a quiz word that I guessed was from Yoruba, and I've actually seen that word amongst the words that she then translates into, like some sentence about hair. So that was like a really interesting and odd coincidence. But anyway, in Yoruba, hairstyles were sort of used not only to say like what your profession was or what your status in society was, but also to sort of tell stories and pass on history. And so she compared it to this thing called Oritsi, I think, that is a storytelling form used in Yoruba. And so at that, my special interest thing kicked in and was like, ooh, I want to know about that. It's about storytelling. And I'm also quite interested in hairstyles and how people dress and cultural aspects that are very visual. So that's another reason why this is interesting to me. And also, it also feels like we're less tangenty now, and she's like addressing a topic then another topic in like nice orderly fashion. But also hairstyles are a very visual thing, and so I really appreciate that there are some pictures like this which are super helpful, but there aren't pictures for every hairstyle. So I had to look up and see what threading is, because I hadn't heard that, like, those words used before to describe a hairstyle, so I didn't know what it looked like. And these are what I found on Google. So I have seen hairstyles like this before, but I didn't know you could make them look like that or like this. So look at this chair, and this chair, and that chair, and that chair, and then look at this chair. I won't get too close because it's gross, but I think the birds, you can probably still hear chirping, noticed I was sitting in this specific chair last night, and we're like, we're gonna poop on that specific chair. That's something a cat would do, and I have to respect it because of that. But these frickin' birds, I realize this is where you decided to put your home, but the dog was here first. If you don't like the dog, you shouldn't have come to this house. Shut up! logging on to show you my socks because I love novelty socks, and these are some of my favorites because they're my favorite shade of pink. Anyway, I'm currently on J.D. Robb's Seduction in Death. I've been reading about one a day, but this one has taken me longer because I paused to read a different book, but I'll tell you about that in a second. This one is about date rape drug murders, where they overdose on the date rape drug, so they're rape murders again. There are a lot of non-rape murders in J.D. Robb's series, but there are also a lot of rape murders. I don't know what the percentage of how often that actually happens versus in like the all told number of murder cases, and whether this is a ratio that makes sense. But Eve Dallas also comes up against serial killers more often than I think real serial killers come up, because these are serial killers as well. The point I was making is that there's always a lot of subplot in J.D. Robb's books, and the subplot in this one is multiple couples getting together, so that part of it is really nice. Also, this has the prettiest cover because it's called Seduction in Death because the murderers view themselves as seducers and set the stage with like rose petals, pink rose petals specifically, and all sorts. It's really horrible, but that's murders for you. But it has a really pretty cover, and I think I might take a Bookstagram photo of this book with my socks because they're matchy-matchy color-wise. Anyway, the reason I'm taking so long to read it is because I started reading. I got to thinking, everybody else is starting to read Pride books. I want to read Pride books. So I went and requested a slew from my library. They're available pretty fast, but the immediately available ones were ebooks that I found online by doodling through Beverly Jenkins' Twitter. I got started on that because I saw a post by her about how she's uplifting black men throughout history for this month. And so after that I went doodling through her page and found that she also retweets romance authors whose work she likes. And so one of them I found was a series of bisexual stories, and I have no idea as to the sexual orientations of the authors. It's hard to do the own voices thing with LGBT people sometimes because a lot of people are not out, and you don't want to pressure them to be out when they don't want to be out. And the reason I went for this specifically is also because there's a really good deal on it. You can get this really long series for $15. And so I got it, downloaded it, and it is more sexy than I thought it was gonna be. There's a little bit of plot, like the smallest amount. It's mostly sex scenes with a little bit of relationship dynamics on the side. It's mostly sex scenes, and specifically it's mostly threesomes and foursomes and the occasional orgy and a lot of public sex, where everyone in the public is into it. It's not like forcing your sexuality onto other people in public. It's like that's the vibe of this whole gang, is they like public sex and they do orgies together. And the realism, maybe not so much that many people who also have this shared interest in this alcohol running business also are into group sex, but whatever. But the main character is bisexual, and there's a woman character who she gets involved with who's also bisexual. But in the group sex situations, it's quite clear that the men are not bisexual. Like, there's been 2 men and 1 woman, and there's been 2 women and 1 man, and there's been 2 men and 2 women, but the men do not touch each other, like, at all. That's not part of it. They watch each other get touched and such, but they don't actually join in on that part. But both men touch both women, and the women touch each other. So that's an interesting, like, specific, like, I don't know, dynamic that I've noticed. Anyway, I learned a lot about threesomes and foursomes that I didn't know before, because I didn't know pretty much anything. I read very vanilla sex scenes and romances most of the time. Non-kinky. Occasionally there's like a little bit of like the tamest and lightest of restraint kinks, but like nothing to this level. So there's like restraint kinks, there's shame kinks, pain, masochism, sadism. The sadism masochism is very light. I know it gets a lot heavier than that from seeing like the various instruments used in it on TV. But like the dynamics of threesomes and foursomes I'm very unfamiliar with, and various other kinks and sex toys. Most of the romances I read don't use them either. But I feel like it is in the spirit of Pride, because there's been a lot of discussions on Twitter about should Pride have kink because there's children there, and then they're like, oh, but there's asexuals there, and like that's not. While there are sex repulsed individuals who don't want to see that, Pride is about doing things that people don't want to see. And having kink at Pride is one of the least off-putting to ace people things about Pride. Most of it is ace and aerophobia. That's why aspec people don't go to Pride. Anyway, so I feel like this is in the spirit of Pride, getting exposed to things I didn't particularly seek out to be exposed to, but that's happening. And I like the characters, they're quite likable, and despite having all this kink and having like restraint kink and things like that, the authors, there are two authors, are very open, clear about consent, and like are very much down the line. Everything is consensual. We talk about consent. It's a big thing. We don't have sex while drunk even, or while significantly drunk. And like that's not a thing that I see in a lot of non-kinky vanilla romances. They mess with consent, but this story is handling that super well. But yeah, there's not much of a plot there. It's all about them sex scenes. So I'm about halfway through, So You Want to Talk About Race, and I'm really enjoying it, and I'm also reading it quite quickly compared to some of the others. I've gotten bogged down in both Braiding Sweetgrass and The Pretty One, which are both written in more of a very relaxed, wandering around the point sort of way, which is not bad. It's just very conducive to reading slowly and in a relaxed way, whereas both this one and Twisted are more purely informational, talking about their points, then moving to the next point and the next. And that is just easier to whip through and not have to like slowly think about. I am finding this very helpful. Most of the information is stuff that I have learned from Twitter, which is where I get most of my up to the minute racial discourse and social justice in general discourse. But what I like about this is that it has a bunch of information in one place, for one, but also explains things really well and gives like the background of a bunch of issues, and is very clear and also concise, but uses enough information and explaining to like fully get the point across. And I think I'm going to buy this on ebook so that my mom will read it, because there's a lot of stuff, racial stuff comes up in our house because we talk about the news and stuff, and it'd be a lot easier to talk to my family if they had a background knowledge from someone else, and I didn't just tell them things and then them not believe me because I can't name my source immediately. And this has like all these little numbers next to her points about that are like numbers of references. She has, I believe, I'm in the back, where she got her information section, and I really like all the little subtopics it goes into, and how like I said, they're efficient. They're very efficient in like getting the point across, but like there are a bunch of really good starter information for like all these topics. Like there's why am I always being told to check my privilege, what is intersectionality, is police brutality really about race, how can I talk about affirmative action, school to prison pipeline, the N-word, cultural appropriation, touching hair, microaggressions, model minority, stuff like that. I really like all of those easily digestible sections because each chapter is fairly short, so like I can read a couple of chapters in a sitting and not feel overwhelmed or forget what was going on, what point was being made at the beginning of the section by the time I get to the end of it. So yeah, it's really good, and I highly recommend it for like giving to relatives who want to not be racist but aren't really sure where to get educated. Or if you are the person not wanting to be racist but not being sure where to be educated. This seems to be a really good, covers a lot of bases source. I'm fairly certain there's a squirrel in this tree because for the last 2 days, Dakota has been content to just sit either there or over here and just stare at it for like hours. I can confirm, because I've been able to catch sight of the squirrel, that is why she's obsessed with this tree. And I don't know why the squirrel doesn't just leave the tree when the dog is inside, but maybe that's the squirrel's house. And it's not like there's anything to eat. This isn't a nut tree. Why is he up there, Dakota? What's he doing? So, multiple updates. I finished So You Want to Talk About Race, and my mom is actually currently reading it. When I went home last evening to watch TV with my family, she had a bookmark in it. And actually I realized that even though the only book I specifically picked up for the Queer Lit Readathon was the Beyond series, So You Want to Talk About Race was written by a queer woman, M. Speck, and also The Pretty One, which I'm currently reading. The author of this, Kia Brown, is bi. And also, I got a notification from my library yesterday that Dark and Deepest Red was due, and so I was like, oh no, gotta read fast. And so I finished it. I was at page like 90 or so and just zipped through the rest of it, got very involved. I mean, I was already fairly involved. I was starting to feel things for the characters. And I was kind of avoiding it because I didn't want to feel strong feelings, but I also didn't want to send it back to the library and get it again. So I gritted my teeth and went in for the feels, and there were lots of feels, but I now officially trust Anna Marie McLemore to write things that will give me feelings but won't break my heart, because there were lots of opportunities to rip my heart open in this book and they didn't do it. So I really appreciate them, and has increased my love for them. And now I want to read all of their other books because they're quite prolific, and there's currently Blanca y Roja that came out a bit ago, and also just come out is a new book that's got a blue cover, and then there's one coming out in 2022, and I think there's another one coming out in 2023. So like I need to first of all catch up on their backlog, and then read the ones that are coming out in the future. Because yeah, the other book that I read by them was Wild Beauty, which was just absolutely gorgeous. I love plant magic, I love witchy magic. I read it in October, and it has a bunch of queer women and a non-binary character, and it was just gorgeous. And once again, had the opportunity to break my heart, but didn't. But anyway, very, very queer. Has a trans, one of the 4 main characters is trans, and then there are just oodles of queer people surrounding the main characters, both in the present timeline and the past timeline. So what's going on in this book is it's based both on the Red Shoes fairy tale, which was written much like Pandora by a man who wanted to be bitter about a woman he knew, about a vain girl putting on red shoes and then making her dance to death, as well as the 1500s, like 1518, dancing plague that hit Strasbourg and some other places in the area where people danced crazily. And according to the articles I looked up on it, there were no actual historical deaths reported at the time. There were anecdotal stories about deaths that came up later, so maybe people died, but definitely not that many. It's mostly been put down to mass mania, possibly influenced by mushrooms. Most likely a reaction to having very little hope and having a really bad mental health time because of bad circumstances and traumatic circumstances. Because there's a really bad haves and have-nots issue there, which Anna Marie McLemore addresses and talks about, as well as Romani people being treated really badly there in the rest of Europe. And the main characters in the past timeline are Romani people, and one of the main characters from the current timeline is Romani, and the other one is Latinx. And there are red shoes in the present and some weird dancing magic, and there is this weird dancing plague in the past, and we have to figure out how they're connected. Gave me lots of feelies because I love the characters. The characters are very lovable, and the magic feels, the feelings that it evoked, the kind of creepy, dark, but also generally awesome magical feels were very similar to Wild Beauty, so I feel like that is Anna Marie McLemore's style of magical writing. But yeah, I'm reading a lot more queer lit than I thought I was. I have more lined up than I thought I was, because multiple of these nonfictions are written by queer people. So that's cool. But yeah, I have even more coming in for the rest of Pride Month, but they won't be here. Well, actually, some of them are at the library now, so I can get them before the end of the week. But those will be in my month wrap-up, because this vlog will end in a couple of days on Thursday, because that's when the dog sitting is over. But right now, other stuff I'm reading, I'm halfway through this now, but I'm now also halfway through my next J.D. Robb book, Reunion in Death, which is about a serial killer again who kills rich men, specifically usually ones who have married at least twice in the past. Why she has a thing for those, I don't know. At first they were like easy targets because she instituted herself as the third wife and then got all their money when she killed them, a Black Widow situation. But now she's doing it again because she likes it, without any monetary gain. And she has a thing against our main character because our main character helped put her away 8 years ago. They were only able to pin one murder on her, and for various reasons she only went to jail for 8 years. Now we're stalking the murderer as the murderer is stalking Eve. So that's fun and interesting. Is there a big subplot for this one? Not really. Just your generic, cute familial scenes between our various found family characters. So I'm now 2/3 of the way through this book. It's really good. I searched it up during the Disability Readathon a couple of months ago because I wanted to read something Own Voices with cerebral palsy representation, and this author has cerebral palsy, and it's non-fiction essays, she calls them, about her life, different aspects of it, and talking about representation, talking about the other chapter title, how she grew up being jealous of her sister because she has a twin sister who's able-bodied, and how she came to recognize that that was bad, how she came to love herself because she grew up hating herself because society told her that disabled people, and especially their bodies, if it's a physical disability, are unlovable. And all of that is really great. And the reason I'm saying that is because I'm going to talk about two seemingly bad times I've had with the book. They're not bad things to bring up or to discuss. They're just like, they made me sad. So the first one is she somewhat quite suddenly brought up how often a disabled person is killed by their caregiver, which hit me like a truck and really messed with me. That's how disabled people are treated by their caregivers and have their rights taken away, and also historical things like lobotomies and being locked up in asylums mess with me a lot, and I really can't consume media that includes those things. But it's stuff that needs to be known about so that we don't do it again and so that we stop doing it currently. And the other thing is, I just finished a chapter called An Ode to the Boys, which is all about how no one has ever expressed a romantic interest in her, even though she has expressed it in other people, interest in other people. And she talks specifically about boys and her liking for them and her dreaming about having a man in her life, but she is bi, so I don't know if she like has different dreams for how she is attracted to other genders. But anyway, she just was talking about boys and men, both when she hated herself and now that she loves herself. Still, nobody is romantically interested in her, and that also not nearly as hard or as deep, but also hit a sore spot of mine, so that's great. But yeah, I mean, it's expected to hit a few sore spots because it is about disability, which I have. So yeah, and specifically as a woman with disability, women more so than men are taught to find their value in romantic relationships. So if you're undesirable to the male gaze and no men are romantically attracted to you, you are dirt. is the and you can never be happy and fulfilled is the common narrative. So, but she wasn't moaning about it. She was very matter of fact. This is just how it's been, and people will tell you that once you love yourself, someone will come along, and definitely not immediately, they won't. And how even being a feminist and knowing you're valuable without a romantic relationship doesn't immediately take away that desire and the disappointment. But yeah, it's really good. Last thoughts on Rain Sweetgrass for this vlog. As I said, I'm only halfway through, so I'll probably talk about it in a wrap-up too. But it is really good. It's relaxing, as I said, and every chapter focuses on a specific plant or group of plants to explain a point or a topic. Like, there was one that was about the three sisters, which are corn, beans, and gourds / pumpkins / squash. And I've known about those for quite a while because I got into seriously researching gardening, vegetable gardening, several years ago, and started growing those three in tandem. Not always in the same area. I circulate them because when I grow them like indigenous people did, it's harder for me to harvest personally. But anyway, the thing that she illustrated with that was interdependency and lifting each other up so that everyone is better off and not just worrying about yourself. Because if you take care of other creatures and beings, they will in turn take care of you, because that's how the world works. So yeah, I'm learning a lot, and I really like that method of learning that is part storytelling, part observation, and drawing conclusions from small examples of life and expanding them to how we can interact with each other and nature as a whole. Hand upon hand, brother to brother, no one shall be greater than all. So that was my couple weeks of dog sitting. I had a really good time. I read a lot of my favorite old books and found a couple of new books that I really enjoyed and learned a lot from nonfiction. I've just been editing and realized that the last clip that I filmed while I was there was the singing clip, and that's because every time I passed by that wall hanging, my brain would play that song on repeat. And I've only memorized the chorus, so the chorus would just repeat forever and ever, so that's a thing that happened. But anyway, thank you so much for watching. Leave a dog emoji if you would like to for today, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!